All right. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Website Intelligence Podcast. By the way, I'll just tell you from the start, don't forget to subscribe. We are a new show on the market, trying to push around subjects like business, digital in the analytics sphere. And today we have Dan Knowlton, who is the owner of Knowlton Agency. They're doing lots of interesting stuff in the digital marketing area. He's pretty popular on LinkedIn as well, and they have their own podcast, which we will talk about business anchors. By the way, my colleague Matt, I know he knows a bit more information about him because they interacted a bit more on LinkedIn. So Matt, why don't you carry on?
Yeah, so I know Dan's work from all the videos on LinkedIn, the whole infotainment approach. But prior to talking about all of this kind of thing, can you just tell us a little bit about growing up, like what that was like, what was different for you, and what maybe influenced where you are today?
Yeah. So I grew up in sunny Margate, which is a kind of seaside town in the furthest southeast point of the UK. I guess my background story is pretty boring in the sense that I had just a very nice, supportive family and I'm very sort of fairly privileged life that was fairly boring. There wasn't anything drastic that happened other than just having a very supportive family whilst growing up, which enabled me to do my best throughout school and that kind of thing. I guess I also had my dad has always been in business, so he had his own manufacturing consultancy. So I guess I always saw him running his own business and looked up to that and kind of aspired to eventually, hopefully one day, have my own business, which I now have with my brother, which is really cool.
Perfect. So I was going to ask you because usually marketers, they're coming from such a diverse background. Did you always wanted to be a marketer, or you had also other aspirations during your grow up? Yeah.
To be honest, no. Looking back, like at school, you have those careers meetings where you sit down with an expert and they sort of say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I just remember not knowing at all, really, not knowing what I wanted to do. I just knew. I guess one thing I thought about was having my own business in the future. Obviously, the naive approach of not having a clue what that would be in or focused on. But yeah, it wasn't like I grew up thinking I want to be a fireman or that kind of thing. It was just sort of accidentally trying different things and having a key focus of business, which eventually sort of took me to starting the agency with my brother.
It's interesting again that you talk about this, the whole fact that your father had a business as well, because I think this is the fifth podcast we're recording, and out of those, 4 people have said exactly the same thing. And Dragos as well is in that situation. Yeah, I'm the only one, I think.
Interesting.
But, yeah, I mean, how does tangibly how would you say that kind of influence kind of starts to come into your consciousness? Like, what kind of experiences did you have?
I guess just spending time I think in my early years. So my dad sort of worked away quite a lot. Originally, when he was younger, he didn't have his own business and he worked. He ran like a big manufacturing plant, and at that time he worked away a lot in France. But as I grew older and he started his own business, he was around a lot more, and it's just a case of like talking and finding out what he was doing and hearing about that really, and kind of seeing the flexibility of having your own business. And I guess again that kind of naive thing of being young and just wanting to be like your dad, which sounds really stupid, but yeah, I guess that was it.
I remember once also there was a post that I don't know if it was a video or a post that you had on LinkedIn a while back, where you mentioned like the role that he had played to a degree in some elements of your business. Like, what kind of shape did that take, and kind of how important do you think that was?
Yeah, really important. So when we started out probably 6 or 7 years ago, he was, and he still is now, he's like probably our biggest mentor in terms of guiding us along that journey. He's someone who has been there and done it in terms of starting his own business. And I guess he just fast tracked our progress because he'd made a lot of the mistakes that we could have potentially made and advised us along that journey. So even like I remember starting out things to do with like pricing. How do you, as a marketeer or consultant, how do you set out your pricing? Processes, the different elements of a business that make it a success. He was kind of there advising us because he'd been there, done it, got the t-shirt. That kind of fast tracked our progress, I guess.
Super stuff. So basically, you always seem to have this grasp on business side of things, because obviously you got it from your parents. I can say that I'm finding myself also in the same situation, being exposed to business meetings and business operations while I was a kid. But to be honest, in my case, during high school, like also you mentioned that I wasn't aware I would have been a marketer after. But what was your first kind of job? Let's say first university job, if you had one, and then the post uni job.
So my first job was when I think I was 13. I did a paper round, the classic job when you're a 13-year-old. Started doing a paper round, I guess my first job out of uni, I did a graduate scheme at a company called Enterprise Rent a Car. So did a graduate scheme there where they basically train you up to learn how to run a car rental branch. So all the different areas of running a business, like sales, management, customer service, operations. It was really thrown in at the deep end of actually managing all of that stuff and learning how to do it. And that was probably one of the stages of my career that I learned the most in terms of running a business, because as I say, just thrown at the deep end, having to do it, which was quite interesting.
And what would you say, like, I know a little bit about this, but I won't throw any spoilers in there. But what would you say are like kind of 2 or 3 like kind of key, like kind of like epiphany type moments, like within your kind of early jobs and those roles that kind of led you to then, take the big leap of faith and set up Knowlton alongside Lloyd?
Yeah, so I mean, I've spoken about this before, but I basically in that job I just mentioned, I worked there for a year, and within that year I got promoted twice, which were 2 of the kind of fastest promotions in the company, to assistant manager. And I basically got promoted too quickly, and I was out of my depth, and I ended up having a bit of a breakdown a year in and quitting my job and moving back in with my parents. I guess that was a pretty pivotal moment, because it was hugely stressful. I got to a stage where I was managing a team of 8 people, 250 cars, and I'd only been in the job for like 9 months. And I was way out of my depth, and it was just incredibly stressful. So I ended up just quitting and having a bit of a breakdown. And I guess that was quite a pivotal moment. Then in terms of other pivotal moments, I always think of moments throughout kind of our journey of starting and building Knowlton around kind of winning customers, because my role at Knowlton is CMO, so I'm heading up all of the kind of marketing and sales to do with our business. And I always remember, like, along that journey we've had kind of stepping stone clients. When we started out, we started working with very small local businesses, your local hotel, your local cafe or restaurant. And along that journey, I remember one of our first kind of clients that people may have heard of, Eurotunnel. I remember us winning them as a client and literally jumping for joy with Lloyd, calling him. He was at a service station, and we were like literally over the moon, because that was the first moment to us where it was like an actual company that people may have heard of is trusting us to deliver, marketing campaigns for them. And then since then, we've gone on to work with bigger brands like FIFA and Wahl, and each of those kind of stepping stone clients have been big moments of joy for us, really, of like, wow, these brands trust us.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I can imagine how excited that must be. It's funny, like you talk about, I know you've talked about this probably endlessly with lots of people, but it's from my own experience and from a lot of people I know, it's often this like uncomfortable growth phase that ends up in some kind of breakdown or kind of like backtracking that then just acts as such a platform to then actually go to where you want to go.
You're so right. And like looking back at that situation, I remember my key motivation after that, when I moved back in with my parents, was like, I never want to be in that situation again where I feel that stressed and that out of depth. I never want to like work for a company and feel like that again. So that was my motivation of like, right, we're going to start this business. We have to make this work because I don't want to be calling my parents up crying and moving back in with them again. So it's literally like, we make this work, and that's the only choice we have. And I think that's what's helped us along the way. And also having an amazing business partner, which is my brother, who's got a completely opposite set of skills to me, has really helped us to like work well together along that journey as well.
Cool stuff, then, and thanks for sharing your journey up until now. What I would like to also to our audience to know about you is tell us a bit about your current role. What is Knowlton Agency doing mostly, and also tell us a bit more about your podcast as well. Would be such interesting thing.
Sure. So our agency Knowlton is focused on producing really creative video and social content, and running paid social media ads, all to drive trackable e-commerce sales, leads, website traffic, that kind of thing. In terms of where my role within that, my role is focused around all of our own marketing. So ensuring that we have everything set up to effectively bring in enough business to help us on our 10-year plan of growth. We've got like a 2030 plan, which started in 2020, and it's a 10-year growth plan. So I'm responsible for ensuring that happens. In terms of the Business Anchors podcast, so February 2020, we wanted to do a bit of an experiment. And in terms of our marketing, we always focus 20% of our kind of marketing resource on trying and testing something completely new. And in February 2020, that test was a podcast. We listened to a lot of marketing podcasts. There's some great ones out there, but we saw a bit of a gap in the market because there was lots of informative marketing podcasts, but there wasn't many that were that like fun or entertaining to listen to. So we thought, you know what, let's try and create a podcast that's interesting, entertaining, like will make people laugh and that kind of thing, but is also really value adding and educational, informative. And we started Business Anchors. To give you an idea of where we kind of pitched the podcast, we wanted to call it Business Wankers, but we knew the algorithms wouldn't allow us to rank for that term. So we called it Business Anchors, and the logo has a big anchor in front of the A to make it look like Business Wankers. And it's just every week, as I say, my brother, who's also my co-founder, and I sit down and talk through different topics around things we're learning whilst growing our marketing agency, strategies that are working, things that are happening in the marketing world. And yeah, so that was an experiment in February 2020. We did that for a whole year, and it didn't make much money. We didn't attract many opportunities that were mentioning the podcast. So we were losing quite a lot of money. Eventually, we won a 6-figure contract that directly mentioned the podcast. And we were like, we're onto something here. And now almost all of our new business mentions Business Anchors in some capacity. So it's a pretty big deal for us now.
Do you kind of like see this like podcast as part of kind of like a broader kind of growing in public type initiative? Because obviously you do behind the scenes stuff, you do some of these kind of funny, quirky videos as well. Is it like a deliberate strategy to go, actually, we want to kind of publicly like grow as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think part of, for those who like follow our content and stuff, they'll know that a key part of our brand is a kind of no BS approach to talking about what we do and talking about marketing. I think with marketing as a whole, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and BS out there. And our approach, which I think has helped us to build an all right size audience of people that want to consume our content, is that we will just say things how it is and sort of talk about, authentically talk about our experience of things that are working, things that aren't working. So yeah, I think that's a key kind of part of what we do. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing. And I think in terms of the background, we pretty much covered the first segment of our podcast. I think we can move on to the second segment, where we are talking about more about websites. We're getting down to the nitty and gritty. And let us know, do you have a website? And if yes, what's your role? What's the role of your website? How are you going about thinking about your website? Yeah.
Sure. Yes, we do definitely have a website, knowltonmarketing.co.uk. In terms of the role it plays a few really important roles for us. So I'd say one of the key roles it plays is it's a place that that people or potential customers go to get a deeper understanding of what we do, and to that builds a bit more trust with them, basically. So we produce a lot of content on social media that helps reach new audiences. When we pique people's interest enough, the next phase of that customer journey is normally to go to our website and have a bit more of a look at what we do. We've got lots of great case studies there and more detailed information about our values and what the business is all about. So that's one part in terms of like sort of, I'd call it sort of middle of funnel trust building piece of content, our website. It also helps us reach new audiences as well through being found through search. And it's also, I guess, the third key thing is it's the place that we host our Business Anchors podcast, which again, this has probably been in the last year. We used to just publish our podcast on Buzzsprout, which is a hosting platform that then sent it out to Apple and Spotify and all the other podcasting players. Now we do that, but we then embed that and do a write-up on our website so that whenever we're driving traffic to people to listen, it's all driven to our website. The good thing about that is that some of that traffic then starts to have a look around our website and look at our case studies and look at what we do. So again, it helps with that trust building phase. So I'd say those three key kind of areas: reaching new customers, building trust with potential customers, and hosting our podcast.
And so with that last one, with the kind of like the hosting of your podcast there, are you kind of like tangibly seeing, as opposed to this kind of like, what's the word? Like self-attributed, like reference to the podcast, are you seeing like direct, like trackable user flows of we've come in here to watch this, we've gone there, and then we've done this?
Yeah, definitely. And it's, I mean, because it is still fairly new, we've actually started to see more traffic come to our site from like using Google Search Console from keywords that are to do with our podcast episodes, which is interesting as well. So yeah, people like, there's definitely a percentage of traffic which is going to the podcast, and then we can track, like you say, that user flow from looking at the about page on our website, looking at our client case studies and things.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to ask you, because we just recently started in this new podcast business, and obviously there are lots of people now just trying, at least, or looking at starting to generate content as much, because nowadays it's content is king. It's even so last 5 years maybe, but now it's even more. I was just looking at this example of Mr. Beast. Yeah, maybe you heard about him. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, man. I was looking. He started this burger joint, and literally his first restaurant was 10,000 people were there at the opening. It's crazy. So the business are starting now actually being content first, and then actually only after delivering the product itself. How do you go? And I'll leave you to it. How do you go about actually generating content? Where do you find your inspiration on a day-to-day basis? These sort of things.
Yeah, so I think you bring up a really good point that we're starting to notice creator-led brands really popping. So like you mentioned, Mr. Beast, he started his burger restaurant. He sold like £10 million worth of burgers. He's got his chocolate bar Feastables. There's other creators like the Sidemen. There's creators like creators or influencers like Kim Kardashian, who has
Kylie
Skims.
Jenner. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Kylie Jenner. Yeah. So we're starting to see a lot more of that, and I think the reason for that is because those creators have done the hard part of having a successful business that sells lots of product. They've built an audience of people that give a shit about what they say, which is why they're now creators are starting to think, I have this big audience of people who care about what I say. Now I'm going to start selling them product. Whereas a normal business would do it the other way around. Think of a problem that's in the world, try and solve it with a product or service, then try and create an audience. So that's why I see kind of creator-led brands growing. In terms of where we get our inspiration from, it's a lot of things outside of our industry. So TikTok is a place that we get a lot of inspiration from. YouTubers, creators. This is why I think it's important to get inspiration from creators and people on TikTok and people outside of your industry, because they've cracked the code of creating content and getting attention, right? So if you can emulate what they're doing and create content that builds audiences of people that actually give a shit about you, then as a brand, you can start to monetize that audience. So yeah, definitely getting inspiration from outside our industry has been key.
I think one really good example of a brand who've actually kind of taken this kind of, not really a creator first approach, but like an audience first approach, is like Heights. Do you know Heights, the supplement?
Yes.
Because they always talk, I think it's Dan, I can't remember his surname now, who founded the company. He always talks about this journey whereby they first engaged and built an audience, and then they kind of developed a product around that, and then kind of activated that audience to start selling to.
Yeah. Something actually on Heights. So one of my best friends signed up to that, and I guess something I struggle with those kind of supplement brands is the evidence that or the difficulty in proving that their product delivers on its promises. So like from my understanding, Matt, that Heights is like a brand where they kind of do like a subscription based nutrition supplement kind of thing that is meant to be good for improving productivity and that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess my only question as a marketer with my like marketing hat on is to convince someone to buy your product and service, you need to prove to them that it delivers on its promises. I guess how are they proving that tiny element in that tablet has made you feel slightly more awake in the morning? Because there's so many variables that impact how we feel as humans. I guess that's always been my question around brands like that. You know, they say that it can do this and that, but you know, having an extra hour sleep could potentially have been the thing that made you feel better that day, not having this tablet. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
100%. I think this is why it's an interesting business model, right? Because they've gained the trust of the audience through the educational side of things first. Like, we want to help you become healthier generally. And then eventually, slowly over time, and I think it was like a year, 18 months after they built that audience, then it was like, and hey, we've fallen upon this thing that we think can really help. And they already had that trust there in place.
Yes.
And
it's interesting.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add on that because I recently read this article on Business of Fashion, I believe, and they were studying these two brands. If you remember back in the day, I'm not sure if you're listening to hip hop or not, but they were studying the brands launched by Jay-Z and launched by Puff Daddy. So we were talking about Rockaware and then Sean John, if you remember this, or even Fubu, yeah. But
Fubu, wow, it's a blast from the past.
It's a crazy. So compared to the other classical brands, the only thing, because those brands were pushed by content creators in a way, they didn't have this social channels that exist now, anyways. But they didn't manage to have a continuity and actually strive through history or remain relevant. That's my only thing with the creator first brands, because they struggle to be a bit relevant, because obviously trends come and go, and not all the time creators stay the same. They come and go, you know, based on trends. Now with TikTok, it's fashionable. Okay, we're looking at TikTok. On TikTok, there are just few personalities. What are your thoughts revolving this area now?
I think it's a really good point. I think the key thing which is a really important point to make with like these creator-led brands, is that for them to have longevity, that whatever they're selling actually needs to be good. Because it's pointless Kim Kardashian coming out or Kylie Jenner coming out with a cosmetics brand. You know, yes, millions of people would buy it initially, but if it's not actually good, people won't keep coming back. So it's really important that creators aren't just trying to make a quick buck by tapping in, like seeing a trend in something and coming up with a crappy product and trying to flog it. Because as consumers now, we can see that inauthenticity a mile off. Like, I guess the early stages of influencer marketing, when people, you know, influencers from like The Only Way is Essex would flog teeth whitener. At that point, people would be like, oh, that's Joey Essex. I'm going to buy that product because he definitely loves teeth whitener. Now, obviously, as time's gone on and we've realized that people are getting paid to say certain things or promote certain brands, as humans, you start to understand like, there's a different motivation that isn't just them actually liking the product. So that authenticity is really key, and also actually ensuring that the product or service that you're selling is actually good. Like, for example, a lot of creators are actually teaming up with experts, not developing their own products. So, for example, like KSI and Logan Paul's Prime drink. So I don't know if you've seen this, but they obviously have launched Prime, which is like a competitor of like Gatorade, and it's been huge online, and it looks like it's their brand, but it's not. If you look like I've seen videos on TikTok where people have looked up the company that made the product. It's just another company. It's nothing to do with them. They're just kind of the poster boys of that brand. But it's a really effective strategy to, if you've got an audience of people that listen to what you say, and you team up with a company that's actually producing a good product and put your face as the poster boy or girl, looking at what they're doing, it's obviously working. So
I
yeah, it just needs to
genuinely
be
didn't
good.
realize that was the case. I'd fallen like deep into that trap of going, oh right, they've made their own drink. It's interesting.
And I'm sure they definitely will have a percentage stake in that
Yeah.
business. But I watched a TikTok the other day where a guy literally did this whole investigation where on the back of the bottle there's like some kind of number that when you search it in the USA, it goes back to a company started by this billionaire that has got lots of different drinks brands and stuff. It's quite interesting.
What like with this respect of like product quality like being so key for like long-term success, how do you approach this kind of situation with clients or like potential clients? Like if someone comes to you and you're kind of like, okay, but you don't really know enough about your product yet, how do you try to make that work in your head that this could still be a successful kind of partnership to kind of embark upon?
I mean, to be honest, as a video and social media marketing agency, we're not usually working with creators. It's the other way around. It's kind of flipping on its head. So we're normally working with companies who have good products.
Yeah.
Like we'll only want to work with companies that we actually believe have good products because it's our job to then sell that. And if we don't sell that, then it looks bad on us. So usually the trouble isn't in convincing them to have a good product. Like we'll only work with them if they do have a good product or service. The challenge is supporting them to create an audience of people that care. The challenge is like putting yourself in a creator's shoes and trying to enable them to act like a creator and start to build that audience. So yeah, that's kind of what we're focused on in terms of like how we're supporting them to do that. It's utilizing our experience and our understanding of what kind of social content works, and having a real as someone who like consumes a lot of content from creators, that really helps us to then come up with concepts and support brands that are helping them to act like a creator, because we're spending a lot of time actually following what creators are doing. That's a key thing, actually, spending time consuming creators' content.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this remaining on the same note. Essentially, is it hard, by the way, to convince your clients to actually implement efforts in social media or start a TikTok account? Because, for instance, you need to catch the trend essentially in the early phases. Yeah, there are, for instance, fashion brands. From what I read online, that actually benefit from the actually growth of Instagram. For instance, one of it is it's a UK brand which I read about, Represent Clothing. Yeah, they weren't so they didn't invest so much in marketing, but they catched the early phases of Instagram. So they had massive reach in the beginning.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is it depends. Like in terms of the answering the question, the difficulty of convincing brands to implement the kind of social media marketing approaches that we're suggesting, how difficult is that? It depends on the brand. So I'll give you some examples. So for us, trying to convince a corporate B2B brand to do something quite innovative and creative is a lot more difficult than convincing a startup that's got a really cool product for Gen Z. So there's like a sliding scale. And I guess this is quite a common question I get asked, actually, is like, we're trying to, because something I haven't mentioned is our agency focuses on producing really creative content. One of the key things we've been known for is like advertainment or entertaining advertising. So having really creative content that's fun and makes people laugh, but also helps sell a product or service. So trying to convince, and a lot of it's kind of tongue in cheek and kind of on the mark sometimes. So trying to convince a B2B corporate brand to do that, it can be challenging. The tip I always give is provide whoever you're trying to convince to do this type of marketing, if it's your boss, your CMO, or your head of marketing, provide evidence and case studies showing how other similar brands have done it. So for example, like on our website, you'll see a case study. There's a B2B brand that we've helped produce this type of content for. We've just secured a £1 million contract through running LinkedIn ads using this type of creative content. And there'll be tons of other case studies that other agencies have worked on and stuff, but like, go to whoever you're trying to convince with those case studies and examples to say, hey, look, here's what Dollar Shave Club did, and they sold razor blades, which is a boring product. We sell boring products. Why don't we try something like that? That's the easiest way to convince someone. Just show evidence that it works.
I guess it's also a bit like the balance between like immediacy and like long-term strategies. Because if you look at the podcast, for example, and you can probably like talk about this more than I can, I know Stephen Bartlett released something recently where he was like, this was the podcast growth for like 2.5 years, and then ping, it jumps up. And therefore it's really hard to kind of figure out why and where and how that happened. But I guess with some of the stuff you do, it's like, it is a campaign. It has more of a kind of immediate impact on actual business metrics as well.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is that balance of, when is it time to realize that something didn't work? How long should you do something until you sort of give up on it? And for us with the podcast, similar to Stephen Bartlett, for a whole year, we lost a lot of money. We put a lot of resource into trying to make the podcast work to attract new customers for our agency, and it didn't work. Only a year later did we get our first 6-figure contract, and then since then it's been an ongoing flow of that happening. So I guess for us, the thing that kept us sticking to the podcast is, first of all, seeing signs along the way that it was moving towards that goal of it actually driving business, like looking at the metrics, looking at how many people were downloading it, looking at how long they were spending listening to it, to ensure that people did actually enjoy listening to the podcast, looking at the feedback from people. We had all these metrics along the way that kind of showed us like, oh, people do enjoy listening to this. We just need to keep trying to improve it and improve what we're doing. If you're listening to this or watching this and you're thinking, how do I know when it's time to give up with something? I'd just check along the way that the metrics are showing that it's moving towards that kind of end goal. In terms of like campaigns for brands, yes, you can have quicker wins, basically. Like, for example, working with a brand like Wahl. So we worked with one of the longest running male grooming brands, Wahl, for years now. When they came to us, and they've obviously got a brand that's over 100-year-old, very established brand that's in every retailer you would have heard of. For us, it was generating instant sales with what we were doing was easier than if a completely new startup that no one's ever heard of came to us. But at the same time, their expectations are higher. Like, if we just sold a few hundred of their products, they wouldn't be happy. We have to sell thousands and thousands, which we do, to ensure they're happy and ensure they're getting a good return on investment. So it's that balance, really.
Super stuff. Because you mentioned also metrics, and you're juggling with so many campaigns and launching so many campaigns. By the way, are you doing more on the content creation side of things, or you're handling also paid ads?
Yeah, we do both. I guess the bigger chunk of what we do is content creation, but we also manage paid ad campaigns as well. Yeah.
I see. Because I wanted to ask you, let's say, give me top 3 analytics or metrics or KPIs, however you want to call it, which you are looking closely at when you're launching something.
Good question. I guess it depends on what the objective of the campaign is. But like e-commerce campaigns, we're looking at return on ad spend. Things like LinkedIn lead generation, we're looking at click-through rates, how long people are watching the content for. I mean, there's a whole range of analytics that we're looking at. It really depends on what the objective is. Like if we're looking to drive traffic to a website, we're looking at like cost per click. I mean, it varies really depending on what the objective is of the campaign.
Another thing, are you also operating in the area of optimizing websites or optimizing the actual experience of users online with your clients as well?
That's not something that we offer as a service, but what we'll always do is, say we're setting up a new campaign to drive e-commerce sales. If we look at a company's website and it doesn't look well optimized to drive conversion, then we will provide guidance, but we'll also say we recommend you optimizing this landing page because it's not going to work as effectively as it could. And also we can look at data from the campaign to see if people are landing on the page and then bouncing off, or using heat maps to see where they're clicking on and where they're dropping off. So that's not something we actually offer ourselves, but it's definitely important for the kind of whole campaign.
Does the creative flow sometimes go all the way from the actual initial, the video campaign or whatever the campaign may be, into the kind of landing page, even the follow-up itself as well? So it becomes more of a kind of, longer thing, if you like. It does in a lot of cases. So, for example, we recently did a campaign with Wahl in collaboration with Peaky Blinders, and we produced a whole range of creative assets, high quality photos, videos, image ads, and all of it kind of flowed together. And there's a specific landing page which used similar visuals and imagery that we'd used throughout that whole campaign, at the awareness stage, at the trust building stage, and at the kind of call to action stage. So it can definitely help when a whole campaign ties in together, because people will subconsciously feel like they already have seen, or they're already aware of what you're showing them, rather than it being very disjointed.
Perfect. So obviously working with so many clients and on your day-to-day basis. By the way, are you guys working in the office, or you have also some remote people around? Or
we're mainly in the office. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. I'm asking because my next question would be, how much does technology play in your life, or if you have any pieces of software you're using on a daily basis, let's say personally, and then also professionally as well?
It plays a huge part. I mean, I think it does in most people's lives now. So I'll give you a few examples. So anything from our marketing and our sales. So we use software like HubSpot to manage our sales and CRM system. We use social platforms to attract new customers. We use Slack to communicate with our customers and with each other. We use WhatsApp for communication as well. We use software like Buzzsprout to host our podcast, Chartable to look at our analytics for our podcast. I mean, there is everything we do is using software and technology in some kind of capacity. I mean, creating the content that we edit, the videos that we edit, we're using software. It really is a huge kind of part of our life, like I'm sure it is for most people nowadays.
Are you the kind of person, or is there someone kind of within your team who's kind of taken this very obsessive approach to checking metrics constantly, like a lot of those creators we talked about at the beginning, the Mr. Beast and people like this? They kind of really obsess over certain kind of indicators. Would you say you've gone to that kind of extreme?
I'd say probably not as well as him, because he's got 100 million plus subscribers, but definitely a key part of what we do now is focused on that. So we have a weekly meeting where we look at all of our analytics and present that to the team. We've actually just created a new dashboard that integrates all of our. We're trying to look for a dashboard that integrates everything from social and our podcast data and that kind of thing. And we've used a tool called Dash This, which allows us to have everything on kind of a main dashboard where we look at that week in, week out, and we analyze how everything's performing. If it's performing well, why is it performing well? What pieces of content perform better than others? How can we emulate that success? Or maybe why is it not performing well, and what do we need to do to change that? And the good thing about having a weekly meeting, so we did a podcast on this recently, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, which is a system and way of operating your business that we've started to implement. One of the key things it talks about is having a weekly pulse meeting where you're looking at how things are performing, rather than having a monthly meeting. So 12 times a year, you're looking at how are things going. Every single week, we're looking at performance so that we can make changes on a weekly basis rather than on a monthly one. So we may see one week, this week we've actually got 60% less views on TikTok and traffic to our website from LinkedIn or whatever, and we can think, why is that? What have we done or not done that is affecting that, and what actions do we need to take next week? And then we set actions each week, and we set who's responsible for that, and then we review those actions the week after. So this is definitely something we've started doing in the last year or so and getting better at. We've obviously always looked at analytics, but we're now seeing how important it is, and I'm sure you guys can talk more about the importance of looking at analytics. But for us, it's definitely really important, and we're striving to get better at that as well.
Yeah, for us, it's a central part. Even Matt, I think you can add also some stuff about this as well. But definitely in each campaign, KPIs for us are massively important. For instance, I remember one of our first campaigns since me and Matt working together. I think he can talk about this as well. But essentially, we created these landing pages, and the first thing we looked at after launching the campaign was actually video recordings to see how people are interacting with this landing page. If you, Matt, want to add your 2 cents on this one.
Yeah, it was kind of like a disaster, like first campaign in a way, like a glitch. Because I'm a bit of an obsessive when we launch a campaign, looking at all the metrics. And over the weekend, I kind of switched on in the morning to kind of look how it was performing this landing page. And I was like, hang on, that hasn't gone up very much, like yesterday. And then I looked at some session recordings from our platform, and I noticed that people were completing the form, pressing the call to action button, and then the mouse was still kind of wiggling around a lot. Like something's not quite right here. And so I actually spoke to support from the CRM, and they found out there was a problem with the actual CRM itself, and that's why people weren't able to actually click the call to action. So yeah, then you can obviously make an improvement and change that and save your weekend.
Because otherwise, I guess you could end up spending a load of money sending people to a landing page that isn't working and wasting that money. So doing that is really key, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I was asking this because essentially when you're mentioning analytics, lots of the people are thinking about statistics, but actually analytics is more about having a holistic or a more comprehensive approach, looking at behavior as well, heat maps, video recordings, conversion funnels. So you should have a 360 view. It's not about analytics anymore. That's why we're pushing this concept of website intelligence as well. And I wanted to ask you as well.
I mean, I was just going to say you're making me feel like we need to do a better job of that as well, because we're not like website intelligence experts or anything. But so you saying all this stuff is like, man, we should really start looking at more heat maps and stuff on our website. And
I wouldn't worry, we're still in the same boat, believe it or not.
Okay, good.
Believe it or not, we're still evolving our own strategy to make sure that we're doing this enough as well. So it's interesting
good.
What you said.
I feel slightly better.
Yeah, this whole dashboard view is something we're implementing too. This whole weekly kind of idea is something that really appeals to me as well. So yeah, I think everyone, regardless of where they're working, is still trying to get the right amount of overview when it comes to data.
I think this is a key thing as well. Like, we should all understand that we're all constantly learning. I feel like sometimes, especially in the marketing space, and business owners feel like they need to act like they've got everything sorted. I definitely haven't. We definitely haven't. We're rubbish at lots of stuff, but we're trying to figure out along the way. And it's a fun journey.
It reminds me a little bit of, this is probably another story that you've discussed so many times, but I really like it. This whole idea of when you and Lloyd first went to a event, like exhibition, like suited and booted, looking to network.
Yeah.
And then kind of realizing
we always said that. Yeah, we said it before in the podcast, but there was like a graph. Imagine the X and Y axis, and the Y axis is like how smartly we dressed, and the X is like how much we actually knew about marketing. And yeah, when we dressed smart, we really didn't know a lot. I think we were trying to compensate with how little we understood about marketing and business by dressing smart. But now we dress a lot more informally, so I hope we know a bit more.
Also, insisting a bit on this note about technology, what about in terms of your personal life? Is there any secret sauce, let's say, which Dan uses in order to optimize himself, or to, I don't know, even educational platforms maybe you're using on a daily basis? Or
good question. I think, I guess a lot of so if people actually, I tell you what, the best way for people to see what's helping me and optimize my life and what we're learning from, we do a weekly email newsletter called the Friday Club, where every week I look at all of the best podcasts, tools, apps that we've learned from or used that week that's really helping us, and we put it on into that newsletter. And it changes on kind of a weekly basis. I guess I do try and actually stay a little bit away from technology when I'm not working, because I spend so much time on using technology. I guess when I'm at home, I want to try and spend time with my kids and my fiance and stuff. So I actually, rather than thinking like, what can I use that's going to optimize my life, I'm more like trying to think, what can I do to not look at stuff like that? So yeah, I guess, yeah, I don't have a good answer to that in terms of tools I use to optimize my life, because other than like, I guess my calendar is, because I'm rubbish at remembering stuff, just everything I do, our team laugh at us because I have random things like Dan's dentist appointment that they can see on our work calendar, and I'm like, that's because everything I do I have to have scheduled because I won't remember anything otherwise.
What you kind of touched upon this a bit, but in terms of like what's next, I guess, for Knowlton and what's next for you specifically, what are the kind of key things that you're focused on, both like personally and as an agency, for the next like 12, 18 months or so?
So a big focus for us is our positive impact plan. So we spent the first probably 4 or 5 years of business trying to figure out what we were doing. Basically trying to figure out what was our value proposition to the world, and scaling that up to a point where we knew what we were doing, and we had this model, and we have that now. Like, we've proven that our approach to marketing works, and we've got lots of great case studies with some of the biggest brands in the world. So we got to that point, and we've still got a long way to go in terms of growing as an agency, but we got to that point of, we actually want to have a bit of a bigger impact on the world than just making money and supporting our team. So we mapped out our positive impact plan, which is focused on a few key areas of how can we have the most positive impact on our people here, our wider community, the planet. So we have like a positive impact crew within the company that meets every 2 months and looks at everything we're doing as an agency. What can we do to have a more positive impact? So, for example, things like a few weeks ago, a couple of our team went to my old secondary school and was like exhibiting and like a careers fair thing to support younger people to get into the industry. Other things like we offset all of the carbon for our projects now. So whenever we're delivering a project for a client, we work out the impact and then offset that. Other things like small changes in our office, like changing our light bulbs to LED. And we've actually, there's a page on our website. If you go to our website, knowltonmarketing.co.uk, there's at the top, there's a tab called sustainability that outlines everything we do and all the actions we're taking after each of those meetings to really try and ensure we're having the biggest positive impact on us, our people, our clients, and the planet. So what's our biggest focus right now? It's implementing that plan and continuing to strive to be better. That's our big focus at the moment.
I really like as well, I saw, I don't know when it was now, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, there was some comment on LinkedIn, as there always can be, that was kind of challenging a little bit some element of the sustainable approach. And again, like this is, again, I guess, an element of kind of growing in public or being very honest and open. You responded very openly that this is a journey you're on. And okay, maybe we're not perfect yet, but this is a real kind of goal that we have.
Yeah, so just to give context for that. So a lot of the content we produce, which has helped us grow, is content that sort of takes the piss out of things to do with our industry. So stupid things that are going on in the marketing world or the business world. We basically made a video that poked fun at greenwashing and how brands are like acting like they're doing good stuff when they're not. And we've been, since 2018. 2018 was when we started to really focus on this, and we've kind of scaled that up more recently. But we've been doing things since 2018, offsetting carbon, planting trees, taking action since 2018, but we'd never publicly spoken about it that much until more recently, when we really started to scale things up. We've started to actually speak a lot more about it publicly, and we got sort of challenged by someone who's runs an agency focused on sustainability, and they sort of said, "You're taking the piss out of greenwashing, but we think you're greenwashing. What are you actually doing to have a positive impact?" And we are doing lots of great stuff, but we hadn't actually publicly communicated it, ironically, because we didn't want to be seen as greenwashing. So what we've since done is we've since created that page on our website that transparently maps out everything that we've been doing since 2018 and everything that we're continuing to do. We also had an independent audit done on our company, which you can see some of the comments on there that actually say that in terms of the size of our business, we're sort of pioneers in having that positive impact, which you can see on that sustainability page. So yeah, it was interesting. Like you say, publicly doing this in such a public way and growing in a public way and being open about what we're doing does open us up to criticism. But as long as, I think our key thing is intent, as long as we're actually doing what we say we do, we can sleep at night knowing that if anyone challenges us, we can openly say, well, we said that because we're doing X, Y, Z. Rather than just saying stuff and not doing it to look good, we feel comfortable because we know we're doing what we say we do.
Absolutely. And it's like you said before as well, like there's just no need for anyone in any business, but I guess especially marketing maybe, to claim to have everything kind of locked down. Everyone's growing and evolving. And if you take a leap like this, okay, maybe at some stage you're challenged, but then, you're openly saying, okay, well, we'll do even more and we'll make it more public.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said before, we're on this journey, and we're not perfect, but we're trying to continually improve. And I think that's what everyone should be doing, trying to be their best and go from there.
I mean, Dan, really, congrats on all of your action. I think you can be viewed as a role model, especially that you're actually operating in this digital sphere and everything is so visible. I think many, even young people, can look up to you. And by the way, because we are asking this question to many of our guests, what would you say to a young person who would like to go into marketing? Would you advise him to actually follow a marketing university, or is good to follow a marketing university? You need to consume some more content around this. What are your thoughts around this?
My advice to them would be become a creator around something you're interested in. So if you play football at the weekend, start creating some videos on YouTube or start a YouTube channel about that and what you like about football and don't like about football and your opinion on things. If you're interested in fashion, start a website or a blog that talks about the fashion trends you're interested in. I guess the reason I'm saying that is because I went to university. I spent 3 years at university. I got a first, but I felt like I didn't learn much about marketing.
But sorry, what did you study? Did you study marketing, actually?
Business management with marketing, yeah, at the University of Brighton. And after that, I feel like I learned more in the first year of just starting our business and trying to figure everything out, learning how to build our website and building a website, learning how to grow on social and growing on social. But learning by doing is the best approach. If I could turn back the time, other than the great life experience I got, I wouldn't go to university at all. I would start by working at an agency to get the experience from a company that's actually doing it already. And in my spare time, I would create content around things I'm interested in, and then eventually set up my own business. That's what I would do.
Those guys are going to be the kind of like CMOs of the future, and the kind of leading people in our industry. I think the ones who just did something at an early age. They learned, they tested, they tried something new, they grew, and eventually they go into a brand or into an agency, and they're just so better armed to kind of deal with the day to day.
Yes, after university, I was not ready to do anything. I think all I'd done was learn how to pass an exam.
Yeah,
which just seems stupid, but yeah.
Cool. Well, it's great advice, and it's similar advice to what we've had from others as well. The doing as opposed to the learning approach. So we're on to our final question, which is the kind of 5 top. Five top tips, I think we call it, for whatever you decide you want to give those 5 kind of top tips on. So.
Okay. Cool. Right. Let's have a think.
Over to you.
So obviously, listen to the Business Anchors podcast because we give a lot more in-depth guidance on lots of things to do with marketing and business and that kind of thing on there. So definitely check that out. I guess a few other key tips that I've learned along the journey is be patient, which sounds really simple, but I think from my experience, it takes a lot longer than you think to achieve what you want to achieve. I thought that by the time I was 21, I was going to be like a millionaire and all that, I naively thought that. Whereas then I've realized, that's not what I should be focusing on in the first place, but it takes a lot longer to have any level of success than you think. And obviously listen to all of your podcast episodes, all 5 of them so far. I think, that's going to be really beneficial. But yeah, I guess there's some advice. Yeah.
And so a final question, because I know it's really popular among other podcasts. Maybe you heard about this question also in other podcasts. Maybe a couple of book recommendations you would make, anything which left you a really compelling impression in the last years?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I used to read a lot of books, and now I listen to a lot more podcasts rather than reading books. But in terms of books that when I was reading books that have been really useful, How to Win Friends and Influence People is a classic by Dale Carnegie or Carnegie. Yeah, that's just it's fairly short book, but really
And
useful.
also recommended by Warren Buffett as well. Actually, his first book.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, his first book. What he read when he went into business, he figured out that communication is actually the strongest tool you need to possess whenever you're conducting business or marketing or whatever. Just know how to communicate to other people as well. Yeah, sorry for
Yeah, yeah.
cutting into that.
Brilliant. No, that's really good. Yeah, I mean, he's way more successful than me, so definitely listen to him. Another one, if you're in marketing agency land, there's a really good book called Agencynomics, which is a great book to do with running a marketing agency and all the different elements of successfully doing that, which obviously for us, that was very specific to what we do. So definitely check that out. Yeah, I'm trying to think of others really. I like Stephen Bartlett's book. Happy Sexy Millionaire, I think it is. That's a good book. Read fairly recently.
You went to the live thing, right? The Diary of a CEO live.
Yes, yeah, that was really good. It was really Did you go?
No, I didn't. No, unfortunately, not. I wasn't in the UK, but I'd love to have gone. And I think it was either something that you wrote or something that I read somewhere else, but like a really like positive review that it was a lot better than expected, basically.
Yeah, it was really good. He like combined a kind of choir and a load of other music and singers and stuff, and it was like a story of his life. And yeah, it was just really good. I'm not a big fan of shows, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it, so highly recommend it. I don't know if he's still doing it or if he's going to do it again in the future, but yeah, definitely recommend it.
Super stuff. So, unless anyone else would like to contribute with anything, we had Dan Knowlton today from Knowlton Agency from the UK, also host of the Business Anchors podcast. Massive Dan. Thank you, Dan. I think we shared lots of good knowledge with our audience. I hope we can see each other in person as well. Whenever we will be in the UK, we'll make sure to pop you a visit as well. And guys, don't forget to subscribe. We are on all the podcast carriers from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts, so on and so forth. Don't forget to keep an eye on the analytics. I'll see you soon. Thanks again, Dan.
Cool. Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers, Dan. Thank you.